And it is 7:35. It is Thursday. That can only mean one thing. That it's time for the Car Pro, and there he is on line one. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are y'all?
I'm doing well.
We're good. You're driving, let's see, what was it you were driving last week?
I had the Jeep Gladiator.
The funky
Jeep.
looking Jeep.
Well, you're on a BMW this week, right?
I am. And
That's quite a difference, isn't it?
Yeah, night and day. This BMW is really a neat car. It's a new model. It's called the M850, and it's a big two-door car. And I think this is a car that I don't think BMW thinks they're going to sell a ton of them, just because anytime you have a coupe, it limits people. But this thing is really, really fast. It drives great. It's all-wheel drive. Beautiful, beautiful interior. Virtually has no back seat. I mean, you couldn't put... I mean, if you were going to even put kids back there, they'd have to be really small. It's more of a briefcase holder, if you will. But it's a fastback. It's just a neat car. It's hard to describe. You almost have to see the pictures of it. And an unusual color to boot. It's called Sunset Orange, which sounds horrible, but somehow or another it really works in this car. I've had people all this week. Everywhere I go, people want to look at it and it stops and to see it. 523 horses, 553 pound-feet of torque, and that's where all the power comes when you get on it. And this thing from a dead stop will just go. I mean, 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds for a car this size is pretty incredible. It's got 2 turbochargers on it. But it's been a real enjoyable week with this car. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's kind of like the color of ketchup.
Yeah, kind of is.
I kind of like that. I don't know why I like that color. I don't like ketchup, but I like that color on that car.
Well, when I saw the window sticker before I got the car, I thought, oh, Lord, orange? You got to be kidding. I'm thinking, UT orange.
Yeah.
But it's more of a burnt orange.
Yeah.
And it somehow or another, it really works. Again, at $119,000, I don't think this is going to be a big seller for BMW, but it does compete with some of the Mercedes. Mercedes has a similar S model that's AMG version that's well over $200,000. So I imagine they probably built this car aiming at the people who are buying that Mercedes. So we'll see. Well, enjoyable, though, I will tell you that. Sounds great. The exhaust is amazing.
Well, let me ask you, now that you've mentioned color, this is one of the things that's fascinated me. I'm seeing a lot of cars out there that are a color that you really can't even describe. It's hard to even say they're in the family of gray or blue or whatever. What is with that? I mean, these are the kind of colors that we've never seen before in automobiles.
It's true.
Is it a new paint technology? And it seems to me that the paint now is shinier. It's I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's different. It's a different quality, a higher quality maybe than what we're accustomed to.
A lot of clear coat that goes on top of the paint that changes. The pigment adds a lot of shine. I know exactly what you're talking about. I see cars that when you look at the color up close in the sunlight, I mean, it really sparkles, almost like an old metal flake job from years ago, except the paint looks really, really deep. And that's something that the paint companies have worked on over the past decade to give people more and more choices with, to be different, have something that's a little bit unique. Where pearl white right now is one of the real popular colors out there. In fact, we've got a story online at Car Pro USA today about 3 new colors coming out in the Lincoln Navigator, and they're all unique, and they're doing a monochrome paint scheme where there's nothing but that color, the mirrors, the bumpers. It's changed a lot, and I suspect it's going to change again. If you could imagine how many gallons of paint are used to build 17 million cars a year, it's a very competitive business. PPG has dominated it for a lot of years, but Now, and especially in some of the upper line foreign cars like this BMW, other paint companies are getting into the mix now.
So I guess it's technology. They're probably able just to set a few dials and on the sprayer, and poof, you got a color that you can't even describe.
You are correct, sir. And I think it's going to get even more interesting as time goes on. We'll see. Cars are like clothes. Things come in and out of style, and then they come back. Browns and green cars were real dominant in the early 90s. And we're starting to see those come back now.
Yeah, so I'm looking on your website right now, and one of the things that I'm noticing is that you've got a story up here about how the used car values are remaining very strong. And I've noticed that because I went shopping, and I'm not a big new car buyer. I always try to get a couple years later just so that some of that high-end values off of it, and you might get a little cheaper. But some of them are really, really holding their value. Yeah,
they are. It's very competitive right now. Certified used cars, because of the price of new cars, certified used car sales have gone through the roof. Later today, I'll have a story up there about the best certified deals out there for July. But yeah, I watch the auction every week, and prices are, especially trucks and SUVs. I'm just continually amazed at what cars are bringing at the auction. And then you realize, okay, these are dealers buying these cars. They're going to want to make a profit on top of that.
Yeah.
So used cars are high, and it's all fueled by the higher price of new vehicles. But you got to be careful.
Well,
with used car prices high and rebates high on new cars, sometimes there's not much difference.
Yeah, and I've noticed that as well. One of the things that I was going to ask, though, is a lot of it had to do with the amount of miles that a car can go nowadays.
Yeah, it does. People are holding on to their cars still. A little over 11 and a half years old is the average age.
Is that right?
Of the car. Yeah, of the car population. That means there's a lot of 20-year-old cars out there, because when you look at the fact that, around 17.5 million new cars have been sold for 6 years in a row, there's been a lot of new cars on the street, yet that age is still over 11 and a half years. Well, and there's a bunch of old ones out there.
And that's amazing, because that's me. used to, I traded cars every year or two. And now I'm looking for a car that will run for 40 years if it would.
Oh yeah, and I think you're in the majority.
Yeah, and I've got two cars that one's got over 100,000 miles, and it's still like brand new. And I've never done anything to either one of these cars other than your tires, batteries, brake job. That's it.
Hey,
yep.
And they just run and run and run and run.
Yeah. I've got a story up today about spark plugs, because nobody thinks about spark plugs anymore. But the reality is, although a tune-up is almost something that you don't even think about or need anymore, spark plugs at around 100,000 miles are, you got to do it.
Hey, time to time. I'll tell you a story. Now, Connor's going crazy over there because we're running out of time, but I'll tell you a quick story. My van that we have, it hit about 150,000 miles, and it started running terribly. To the point where we had to take it in, find out what happened. Well, it had a tune-up at 100,000 miles. They had changed the spark plugs, but they couldn't get to the two back spark plugs. They were hard to get to, so they just didn't change them. And so we had two spark plugs that were completely corroded and didn't work anymore.
I've heard that story before.
Yeah.
Some of them. Ford had a couple of engines that it was really hard to get to one of the back spark plugs. You had to have a special tool. Most of the shops didn't have it unless you were at a Ford dealer. And it caused a lot of problems. I don't mind telling you.
Yeah, and it's just one of those interesting things that, spark plug doesn't work. Your engine doesn't have anything to combust the fuel in there.
Very quickly, I got a story you guys are going to love. It'll be up on the website later today about Texans driving fast. The guy that held the record last year for the biggest ticket by DPS was driving a 2003 Porsche 911, clocked at 166 miles an hour.
Wow.
And there's a lot of them in the 120 to 140 range.
We do like to drive fast, I think.
We
All right.
do.
Got to run, Jerry.
I got
Catch the Car Pro Jerry Reynolds 11 to 1 every Saturday right here on KFYO and CarProUSA.com, correct?
Yes, that is correct. You guys take care.
All right,
Okay.
thanks, Jerry.